far, far away from us. It is really cold in here. Do you see a thermostat? This thing? That's gonna make it much warmer. That's like, you know. All right. Yeah, I don't know that there's anything I can do. Push a couple of these buttons. I'll push all the buttons. Burn more carbon. All right, we're switching. Anybody Keystone XL? Any questions? Anything? Yeah? Pipeline versus train? Fly oil? It's super heavy. Yeah, you would burn so much oil trying to ship the oil. Yeah. Anybody else? Do you guys know about this story? Kind of, sort of, a little bit? No? Well, it's already being produced. The question is, how much more of it's going to be produced? I don't know really good numbers, but I think the numbers they're talking about are now they're producing it at $50 or $60 a barrel, and it's really low grade oil. It costs a lot to make, so probably less than that. They have put a bunch of energy into creating it. So say it's $60 a barrel, but if you get it to Texas, you can get $70 or $80 a barrel. Depending. The price of oil is going up and down constantly. Maybe $100 a barrel. So impressively, it's produced at far below what other oil is produced at, even when you price in how expensive it is to get it there. Yeah. Obama's in a tough place. What does Obama think? That's like a big riddle. So Obama has said, we are producing more oil than ever before. We are more, he showed a graph, or I don't know if you watch it on whitehouse.gov, you can see his PowerPoint. He just says things with no PowerPoint. But anyways, there was a thing showing that we're producing almost as much oil. Our dependence on imported oil is as low as it's been in 20 years or 30 years. So President Obama is like, we have a huge boom going on for a whole bunch of reasons, fracking included. We have a huge boom going on in domestic energy production. And President Obama thinks that that's a great thing, producing more oil and gas domestically and less imported oil. Another huge part of the story to get into. So here in North Dakota is what's called the Bakken. And we'll talk about it later. But the Bakken is where this huge amount of oil is coming from. There's a boom going on in North Dakota in domestic oil production. It's also at the top of the Keystone XL pipeline. So this Bakken oil is going to get taken out of the ground no matter what either. And the train that blew up in Quebec was taking Bakken oil, right? It wasn't tar sand oil. So there's a huge oil boom going on, and this pipeline could help to move that oil as well. It's domestic, so we don't need the part coming from Canada, but it's U.S. oil. So President Obama thinks more oil produced domestically is a good thing. He hasn't weighed in on the Keystone XL thing. He doesn't like Tom Steyer and Bill McKibben needling him. He wants, President Obama wants the left to like him, so he doesn't want to piss off the people to the left of him. But he's, very triangulatingly in the middle. Yes. More capacity, more oil, more. And President Obama has said that he's in favor of this part. He's been there, he's visited, he's like, we figured it out, we solved the problem, we're going to make this happen. I don't really know. I think it's like 30 or 40 years in the project. Follow the same area. On this top part, I think this one because they want it to go through the Bakken. The other one that goes over towards Minnesota, and I think they want it, have like a giant terminal where some other production is. It's a good question though. Yes. Pretty confusing, isn't it? Yeah, very confusing. It's hard being President Obama. Yeah, so that's a question for all of us. Like, we get global warming. It's like a crazy drought out there, but are we changing any of our lifestyles that much? Really? We're not really changing ourselves. We're just kind of carrying on. I think, President Obama's, one of his policies is all of the above. Let's produce more and let's move towards renewable energy at the same time. It's not shut down carbon, move towards renewable energy. It's pump more oil and move towards renewable energy. So it's hard. All right, we are going to switch back to the boring lecture after that interesting stuff, but we're going to do a little bit of math. We'll go back to preferences and indifference curves, and today we'll talk about consumer surplus and willingness to pay. So we're back at indifference curves. We were doing these last time. They slope down. They cannot cross. They're like, we think of them as like topographic lines, getting us to higher levels of utility. A higher indifference curve is better because our utility is higher. They're convex, which means they curve. They go up at the axes. And they sort of implicitly map our trade-offs between the two goods. We have trade-offs in how the goods make us happy. We don't want all of one or all of another. We want some combination. So what we do is we choose, if we have an indifference curve map with two goods on it, x1 and x2. We have three indifference curves. And this is us going up in utility as we get more. We have a budget line, a budget constraint, which is this line here, the straight line. And in this space between these two bundles, it has quantities of the two goods that we're choosing. And we want to consume the bundle that's the highest bundle that we can afford with the highest ranking. So if we have bundle A down here, down on indifference curve 1, we would have bundle B here. Bundle B is preferred to bundle A. It's on the highest indifference curve. Bundle A we can also afford, but we can afford more. We can afford to go up to bundle B. Bundle C would give us more utility, more happiness, but we can't get there. We can't afford to get to bundle C. We could also afford on the indifference curve bundle D over here because it's on our budget constraint, but it's down here with bundle A, and we could get to this higher indifference curve by shifting into more of good 2 to get to bundle B. So bundle D is not preferred either. So we say the consumer chooses where the indifference curve is tangent to the budget constraint. We could talk about the calculus behind this. There's a utility function, maximize utility subject to a budget constraint. which we would say y minus p1x1 minus p2x2. So we have a calculus equation with utility. There's not any functional forms utility, but we're maximizing utility. I'm not going to get into the calculus, but just showing it, we have what's called the marginal rate of substitution, the marginal utility from x over the marginal utility from y. And at that point of tangency, that ratio of marginal utilities is going to equal to the ratio of prices. The marginal rate of substitution, the marginal rate that you would trade off between the two goods and how much they give you utility, you would set equal to the marginal rate at which they would cost you out of your pocket. So there's the slope of the budget line, and there's the slope of the tangent of this utility curve. Really quick for you guys, look at this picture. Tell me what the prices are. We've done this a whole bunch of times, but so up here we have $5. We could spend it all on one or the other. So what's this price here? The price is 2. We could afford 2.5 of the units of those. The price down here, price is 1. We could afford 5 of those. So if we see the curve, we know how much money we have. We know what we can read that out of the prices are. We can solve for the other things. All right, so in this, let's draw an indifference curve and make a choice. Can you guys do that? So just like somebody came up to me at the end of the last class and was like, I don't really get how we do that part. Because we don't have this functional form on this indifference curve thing. Where is the indifference curve? It's invisible. So basically, you would start by saying, I think they're going to buy this much. And there's this invisible secret function called utility that's going to draw some sort of curve through that point that just touches the indifference curve there. That's not a very good indifference curve because that's going to touch the axis. We don't want it to. So there is no real way of knowing where the indifference curve is. We just know where these bundles of tangency are, and implicitly, there's a secret, and this one's a little bit weird over here too, like this one's going up, shouldn't go up like that. So we have properties of the curve. We don't know what the functional form of the curve is really, but we just know that it has some properties that we know about. We did coffee and donuts. The slope of the line was -1/2. And then this is just going back to, I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but we talked about what happened if we could do different budget constraints with price changing. This is the budget constraint low, this is the budget constraint medium, and this is the budget constraint high. So you know what's really weird? The colors are really awful. Does that look really washed out? I gotta figure that out. This is a problem of moving from PowerPoint to PDF. Anyways, we're changing the prices, and the amount that we consume at these bundles is changing. Right? So we're using a difference curve and a changing budget line to show that as the price changes, the budget constraint is getting steeper, and the quantity that we're consuming is getting lower. We did that to show that we can get a demand curve out of this. So this was just a way of showing how we got a demand curve out from those indifference curves. This space was in quantities, quantity of coffee, quantity of donuts. And then we go here, now we have the price of donuts and the quantity of donuts. How do you guys think you spell donuts? With a G or no G? No G? Maybe. What's that? The G. I guess I'm from New England. I think it's a G, but maybe in California it's the easy, spelled the easy way. That'd be the California way. Anyway, so we have a demand curve here that we got out of indifference curves. We did this in the last lecture, but one other thing about demand curves that I've also talked about that I wanted to review really quickly is we have individual demand curves, and then we would have an aggregate demand curve that summed up individuals. So when we have a private good, if we have an individual demand curve, we would have to add horizontally. 2 people would consume 2 units, 3 people would be going out to consume 3 units. So we're summing up quantities across people in a horizontal way. Anybody would pay this given price. We could have different demand curves for each individual, but as they sum it up, we would be moving out in this direction to an aggregate demand for a private good, summing horizontally. With my handwriting, we should probably go with the simpler spelling. So if it's a public good, on the other hand, where we can share the consumption of that good, we're going to sum it up vertically. So we have one person wanting 1 unit, and then the second person wanting that unit, and the third person wanting that unit. D1, this is the D with 2, D with 3, D with 3. We're going to do this vertical summation. The way I think of it is we don't need more than 1 unit of this public good. We can all share because we can all look at the rose bushes. We can all go to Yosemite. So the price is going to be added up vertically for the same 1 unit of Yosemite, or same 1 unit of Rose Garden. So this is the question of how we move from an individual person's demand curve to an aggregate demand curve that aggregates over all of the people. So now we're going to move to consumer surplus and measuring consumer surplus. So we're going to change how we're thinking about demand curves a little bit, and we're going to call it willingness to pay. But we need to do this because we're going to try and measure the benefits to consumers of some sort of change in policy. So for environmental goods, we're going to say we're going to price some sort of externality. There's a pollution that's polluting people. We're going to change the price. We're going to have to price a public good, a wilderness, the existence of a wolf. We're going to have to come up with a value across different people of these goods. We need to estimate, environmental economics, we estimate the willingness to pay for environmental goods. And we need a way to translate that into some sort of money measure that we have rigorous grounds to stand on. We're going to prepare an environmental economic statement. Somebody's going to have a lawsuit about it. We have to have some economics behind it. So the first way that we're going to think about this is marginal willingness to pay. So this is this inverse demand, the price up here, that people are willing to pay for 1 unit. So a demand curve is sloping down like this. But implicit in this demand curve, we would say there's a willingness to pay. So this is the first unit. Somebody's willing to pay up here this high price. The marginal willingness to pay is up here. For the second unit, the willingness to pay is up here. The third unit, the willingness to pay is up here. So we can go and ask about, environmental economics will do like a survey and ask people what their willingness to pay is for what numbers of units. Different people will give different prices, and we can sum them together to make this demand curve that will say how much people are willing to pay for how many units of pollution reduction, of wolves in Yosemite. How much would somebody would be willing to pay a lot of money for a wolf in Yosemite. Other people would be willing to pay a lot less for a wolf in Yosemite. We're going to add them up and get a demand curve for these goods by the willingness to pay. And it's going to follow these attributes of a demand curve where you pay a high amount for the first couple units and a decreasing amount for additional and additional units. Demand slopes down. At the marginal willingness to pay, we're going to pay less for each additional unit. Each additional unit that we get will pay less. The price of the next unit will be lower. Total willingness to pay, a total amount, so if we have our demand curve again, will be the area under this curve. So for the first unit where the willingness to pay was here, the total willingness to pay, P times Q, would be this area in here. That's the total willingness to pay for unit 1. For unit 2, we'd be here, and we would add these 2 shaded in areas. Price quantity. So now the willingness to pay for 2 units would be the 2 blocks added together. The total willingness to pay for 2 units of wolves in the wilderness or national parks. Our third unit, now our willingness to pay is going to be all 3 of these. So it's the area under the demand curve. If we're in calculus, we could say it's the integral of the demand curve for these units from here to here, from 0 to however much that we have at equilibrium. Total willingness to pay, the area under this demand curve. So consumer surplus, this measure of how good things are for consumers, is this willingness to pay minus how much is paid. So we have an equilibrium price, equilibrium quantity, and that's how much paid to supply the good. Price times quantity. So for all of the units less than Q, there was some price that was higher than the equilibrium price. And all of that amount that's higher than the equilibrium price is going to give us an area that's above what we paid for it. That's going to be our consumer surplus. So if we have a demand curve, and we have an equilibrium price, and equilibrium quantity. So for the first units, our willingness to pay was this whole thing here. Right? If we're thinking about an integral under a curve, that was a messy one. We have a whole big area under the curve, but at the equilibrium price here, we only have to pay this much for all of the units of Q. So for the first, like Q minus 1 units of Q, we have this whole area that we didn't have to pay how much our willingness to pay was. We only have to pay what our willingness to pay is out at the equilibrium price here. This block in here, which is P times Q, is the total amount that we're going to pay for the goods. On aggregate, all of the consumers are going to pay this price for the amount that's supplied. But some people really valued the product a lot. Some people really wanted there to be wolves in Yellowstone, and they were valuing a whole bunch up here that they're getting for this price. And so they're having a surplus. They're having an amount that they're getting above what they're paying for it. And adding that all up, everybody's surplus, the amount that they're valuing the first few units that's higher, is going to put this triangle right here. The consumer surplus. It's the total willingness to pay, which would be this whole area, the integral under the demand curve, minus the amount paid, which would be this block down here. So another thing is that we can think about if we shift to having a larger amount, the increase in total willingness to pay of an additional unit. So if we add n additional units, we would increase our willingness to pay by a certain amount. So and when economists think about things, they're almost always thinking about changes in a market as a change in price. We could think about the wolves in Yellowstone as a change in the price of wolves in Yellowstone. It was astronomically high. Now we can buy the first number of wolves in Yellowstone for the price of this reintroduction. And we can have some intuitive ways. We didn't know, 10 years ago, we didn't know what an iPod was. So it's the change in the price of carrying all your music with you at any one time. If we're thinking about proposing a dam, not having a dam, we're going to say this is a change in the price of electricity. We're going to measure how much the value of this electricity is. So back to some of the economic questions that we're driving in the Keystone Pipeline, the pipeline is going to change the value of transporting this oil. Here's an interesting one. So here's one that we don't have yet, space travel. Oops, shouldn't look at the board while I do that. So we don't have space travel yet. But people have started to pay for it. There's a company that's proposing it's going to take people into space, and they've set a price point, even though the technology doesn't exist yet. So you can sign up. 500 people have put down a deposit of $250,000 to be the first people in space. So it's just interesting, what's the price of going to space? 500 people have said what they think the price is. We live in a weird world where we have markets for almost everything. But anyways, the point here is we could get a consumer surplus for space travel at this point. What's the value to these people of going to space? So we think about things as price changes. We think about technology change as something that lowers prices. We also think about environmental taxes or environmental restrictions that are going to increase the cost of production as price increases. So in environmental applications, environmental policy, we want to add a restriction. We want less pollution. We want less carbon. We're going to say how we're going to increase the price of carbon to reduce things. And so increasing the price of carbon or increasing the price of shipping oil is going to be a price increase on that oil. All right. So here we'll do a little more complicated consumer surplus question. So we'll start with the demand curve again. And at this demand curve, we'll have an equilibrium price and quantity. And right now, we will have consumer surplus as this whole triangle here. The total willingness to pay minus the amount that we paid. P times Q is down here. All right, let's say we have an increase in price. So if we say that the price is going to